Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, in today's video, guys, I am going to be doing a second round of this series of Halloween rankings that I am doing this October. There is many more to come, so stay tuned for that. In this ranking, however, I am going to be doing the Michael Myers actors slash portrayals ranking, and this is the one that I gotta say I was most excited to do. I have been wanting to do this ranking for many years. I was going to do it last year, but I decided to push it till next year. In fact, a lot of rankings I just decided to push until next year with Halloween Kills. I was like, the year will fly by quicker than I think it did, than you probably think it will, and it did. Yeah, it feels like Halloween Kills came out not that long ago. But anyways, for this ranking, I managed to scrape up 10 total actors that played throughout the 13 movies, and this ranking should not be as lengthy as my Halloween films ranking. If that was something that you guys weren't a huge fan of, there's not a whole lot of detail that I have to go in with explaining why the actors are at a certain spot in the list. So not planning on this one being nearly as lengthy. Also, there's less to do, obviously. And so, what are the factors that I am going to be doing in this list? Obviously, the mask is not going to matter, but the main things, because I've already done a separate ranking for that, the two main things though are going to be the gait, and then the way he holds the knife. Those are the two main things, but also just any subtle movements that Myers does throughout the movie are going to be included into my decision in this ranking as well. And I will say, before I get onto this ranking, I don't think any of these actors are bad. I think they all do, a, you know, a pleasant job. They all do what they need to do. Honestly, none of them do. None of them had such a bad performance that it brought down the movie for me or whatever. A lot of that just had to do with the mask, which is obviously not their fault. But I think all of them just did the job that they needed to do. And really, it just boils down to some of them had more things that they brought to the table than others. Some of them just did sort of a kind of regular standard performance that anybody out on the street could do if they know how Michael Myers is portrayed. So that's really what most of these boil down to. And I'm not gonna try to make how many scenes or movies they were in as a huge factor. But if one person was able to do a lot more than another person, then it's kind of just by default they're going to be able to have the advantage there. So some of them are at a disadvantage, and some of them are at a very big advantage because they were able to have more screen time. Some of them were in 2 to 3 movies, and then others were only in one scene. Other than that, let's get on to this ranking. Number 10 is Tony Moran. And I think the one job that he had to do in this one scene, I think he succeeded in. So it's unfortunate that I have to put him at this number 10 spot in the list. If you don't know, Tony Moran played in one minor scene. I believe there might have been a few other scenes that he played in the original Halloween, but for sure, this one minor, I would consider it sort of a kind of a major scene if you think about it. But he played in this one scene in the original Halloween, and that is towards the end where Laurie is trying to take off his mask, and she eventually does get the mask off, so we get to see what his face looks like, and that is Tony Moran playing Michael Myers right there in that scene. And they actually decided to use Tony Moran for this scene because they thought Nick Castle didn't have sort of a more innocent baby-faced look that Tony Moran did, a more innocent young man look that Tony Moran did, and I completely understand that. Nick Castle, obviously, certainly very young looking at the time, but he had very stylistic, curly hair, 70s look, whereas Tony Moran had a much more simpler hairstyle and a kind of innocent looking face. And so when you take off the mask in the scene, you just see, wow, this is just a regular young man stalking these people and killing these people, and it's just like, wow. So I think he did a great job for the one scene that he had to be in, and because if it was any other actor where you're doing this mask reveal, it can completely ruin the scene for you if there's something off about them. But Tony Moran's looks just really, really helped with making the scene not be goofy. Because they could have easily messed up in the scene, but they didn't because Tony Moran, I think, did a competent job. So he goes at the number 10 spot. Number 9 is going to be Don Shanks, and really the only reason that he goes above Tony Moran on this list is because he had a lot more screen time. He played Myers in Halloween, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And, like I told you I was going to be saying in this ranking, doesn't really bring a lot to the table. Not really a huge fan of his, the way he holds the knife in this movie. There's a few scenes where he's just kind of staring out into space, which I already don't like, and then the knife is just an odd distance away from his body, just sticking out there, and he's looking around, and then he brings his head down, and he looks at Loomis in that one scene on the stairwell, and I don't know, not really a huge fan of that. Doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table. And in the scene where they do have a mask reveal in this movie, looks a little bit weird. Something about the hair there, I don't know, maybe it's the lighting, something just looks off. Like, I couldn't tell that was Don Shanks there. I haven't really seen a whole lot of pictures of young Don Shanks. Just kind of an odd-looking face when they did that whole mask reveal scene. So overall, Don Shanks doesn't really bring anything unique to the table, and that's why he goes at this spot. Number 8 is going to be Aaron Armstrong, who's kind of a new kid on the block here. Most people don't really know about him yet because Halloween Kills is still relatively new. But if you don't know, he played Michael in the flashback scene in Halloween Kills. And I think in the amount of time that he was in this film, which is about 5 to 10 minutes, he brought a lot more to the table than Don Shanks did in the entirety of Halloween 5, which is saying something. I think he is one of the main reasons why this scene was such a success and carried on that original John Carpenter's feel. Aaron Armstrong's performance certainly elevated the scene. I was very surprised when I learned that it wasn't Nick Castle or James Jude Courtney in this scene. So hearing that it was another actor who did this, I was like, wow, he did a really, really great job at imitating Nick Castle's performance in this flashback sequence, and is certainly what made this sequence feel like it was actually a part of the original Halloween. So I think he did a really good job. There are obviously a few things that stick out in the scene that make you realize, yeah, that doesn't really look like the original Myers that we seen in 1978, especially the scene where he's strangling the officer, and for some reason the camera's like shaking, so I don't know, I can't tell if it's him who's shaking the officer or if it's just the camera that's shaking for some effect that they were trying to do in that one little cut. But I don't know, something off about that. And also when the police officers are shooting at him, or the sheriffs are shooting at him, and he turns away and he walks and he just avoids the bullet. I don't know. It tries to kind of imitate that scene where Nick Castle is standing, beside the bush, and then he casually steps to the side. But when you have somebody shooting at him and he just barely dodges the bullet, I don't know, a little bit awkward. But otherwise, Aaron Armstrong in this one scene that he was in did a really great job. Number 7 is Brad Loree, and he played Michael Myers in Halloween Resurrection. And I don't know what it is. There are a few elements in here that that are very similar to Chris Duran's performance. And I'm not going to spoil how I feel about Chris Duran's performance or anything like that, but I think he has a slightly worse version of Chris Duran's performance. It's very similar, but it's just not. It's slightly worse. I don't know. There are just a few similarities between their two performances. Not completely, but a few here and there. Let me think. He doesn't really have a unique style of holding a knife, so I can't really ding him there. His walk is, fine, just normal. Yeah, not really a whole lot that I can think of that Brad Loree does bad or does good at. Not really a whole lot to talk about. He's just has a very generic performance, if I'm going to be honest. And I don't know, some of his movements feel like they're more sharpened. Maybe that's just because of the look of the mask. So yeah, like when he turns his head especially, I don't know, the movements look a little bit more sharp and less natural. I don't know. Brad Loree, not really a whole lot to talk about. Just a pretty generic performance. Not a whole lot that he brings to the table. But I think because he doesn't have a knife way he holds a knife like Don Shanks doesn't really bother me. And there wasn't any really scenes that bothered me for him. So I think that's why he goes above Don Shanks and why he goes above Aaron Armstrong, just for the fact that he had a lot more screen time, obviously. So Brad Loree, number 7. Number 6 is Dick Warlock, and for some people, Dick Warlock is one of the best Myers actors, and for some people, they're not as big of a fan not as big of a fan for him. And I used to really love Dick Warlock, but over the years I've realized that his performance is not as natural as some of these other actors. He's got this very robotic gait, and even some of his movements are very robotic. And it really does stick out when you think about it. Especially the one scene that emphasizes this so much of his kind of animatronic like performance is when he's stepping through the glass door, and he's approaching the sheriff, Loomis, and Loree, all of them, and he steps through that glass door and he takes one large step, breaks through the glass door, and then he continues walking, and he's got this very patterned walk. Just every beat is just nicely paced, like perfectly paced. I'm not a huge fan of that. Also, the way he holds the knife, very close to his chest. It's not even really a knife; it's like a scalpel. Not a huge fan of that either. And he does it too, like with the robotic walk. He's got the hand, beside him, and he's just walking there with the scalpel. So yeah, he's got this very just strict robotic performance that I'm not a huge fan of. It doesn't bring it down for me, but I would much rather prefer a Michael that actually feels like a human and not like a programmed robot. But the main reason why I put Dick Warlock at number 6 and not below Brad Loree, because if not for this, I probably would not have put him above Brad Loree, is because I don't think any of these other actors on here could have had the talent to do some of the stuff that he did in Halloween 2. Not only Halloween 2, don't forget this, but he also played in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch in this one scene that was super badass, and I'm definitely going to include it on here. Even though he wasn't playing Michael Myers in this scene, I'm definitely going to include it on here for Dick Warlock, and I really want to give him credit for it. So first of all, he does a really great job at being a stuntman, especially in that final scene where they blow up that room and he's on fire and he falls down to the ground. Really great job by Dick Warlock. And also even just right before that, when they're in the room and they shot his eye holes and he's holding his eyes and he's swinging around trying to get to them. I think that was probably his best performance throughout the movie. I think I don't know, it just didn't feel like the performance that we got from everything else beforehand. So I really want to give him credit for some of his stunt work in this movie, as well as his small scene in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch where he rips the dude's head off. So freaking cool. Had to put him at number 6. Also, Dick Warlock is just really cool. He has something going on where you can like ask him questions and something like that on this website. Just one of my favorite actors, not necessarily for his portrayal, but just because of his personality and his love for the fan base and just willingness to interact and answer questions and all that stuff, and just the work he did in the franchise. I gotta give him credit for that, so he goes at number 6. Number 5 is going to be Tyler Mane, who played Michael Myers in the Rob Zombie remakes, and he brings on a more scary, or probably the most scary, intimidating performance for Michael, and it's very similar to sort of how Jason is portrayed. Obviously, Tyler Mane, he's got a big stature, he's very tall, and it just adds to that very that very intimidating performance by Michael Myers in the Rob Zombie remakes. And I am a fan of that. I like that different style of performance in the Rob Zombie remakes, and I think it was one of the main things that kind of sort of separated Rob Zombie's remakes from just the original Halloween. So I'm glad that he decided to go for that more intimidating, brutal side to Michael. He's obviously is pretty brutal in the first one, but I think he gets even more brutal in the second Halloween remake. And I don't know. In the second one, what makes it a little bit awkward is just probably just his outfit, especially that scene where he. Oh, don't even bring that up. Don't bring that up. Too specific. All right, number 5 is going to be Tyler Mane, who played Myers in the Rob Zombie remakes, and he brings a much more intimidating, brutal side to Michael that I am honestly a fan of, and I think was a good thing for sort of separating the style of writing and overall theme for Rob Zombie's remakes and John Carpenter's Halloween. So I am a fan of this sort of new this different taste in Michael in terms of his performance, this more intimidating, brutal side of Michael, almost very similar to how Jason is portrayed, and I really do like it. And yeah, I think a few standout scenes for Tyler Mane in terms of his brutal, intimidating side are the bathroom scene where he is fighting that pro wrestler. I believe he's a pro wrestler. And then in the Halloween 2 remake, where he tosses the dude on the ground, both of them are definitely his standout scenes. Or in the second one, in that opening hospital scene where he's stabbing the nurse on the ground, really, really great performance there. So do like this more brutal, intimidating side to Michael, but obviously I would prefer the kind of original, natural performance that these other actors bring on. So Tyler Mane, number 5. Number 4 is George P. Wilbur, who played Myers in Halloween 4 and Halloween 6, and I think his performance actually improved amongst the two. I liked his performance in Halloween 6 a lot better, but that's not to say that his performance in Halloween 4 was bad. In a few of the scenes, it looks a little bit goofy, but that's really just some of the stuff that he had to wear in some of the scenes. In fact, he had to wear like shoulder pads in a few of the scenes, so that's why it looks like he's got some very broad shoulders. And when he's trying to like stab somebody, it's I don't know, it's very he doesn't have like a very high window of mobility in his arms and stuff like that. It looks very awkward when he's trying to stab people. And they didn't do that in Halloween 6, so not only did that help, but also I think his just overall performance improved in Halloween 6. So George P. Wilbur, I'm not sure what it is. I think he just has a very strong performance in Michael. In Halloween 6, I'm gonna talk about Halloween 6 in most when I in this placement, because that is his better performance in my opinion. He's kind of got this perfect balance of the brutal side to Michael, but also still keeping some of that natural human elements to it. So he's got this kind of perfect balance between Tyler Mane and then the original Nick Castle, all the other actors that kind of do that just regular Michael Myers performance sort of. He's nice, perfect balance. The only thing that I don't like is in a few of the scenes in Halloween 6, his gait, his walk, is a little bit weird. He's especially in the scene where he's walking outside and it's like a thunderstorm, and you can see the thunder or whatever. And he's walking outside in the middle of the night, and he's got this sort of like smug walk, like, yeah, look at me. It's I don't know, a little bit awkward because his head is like tilted up, and then his arms are, kind of out far, and it's just this very smug walk that looks a little bit off. But otherwise, George P. Wilbur, great performance. Number 3, and I don't know why some people don't like this dude's performance in Halloween H2O, but at number 3 is Chris Durand, who plays Myers in Halloween H2O. I think his performance is great. I really like it. There's a few new things that he does in this movie that Myers has never done that still carry on those natural elements while also being really cool. The big standout scene for me in this movie that Myers has obviously never done is when Laurie is out in the hallways of the school searching for him, and then he casually lowers from the bar onto the ground, and then Laurie turns around, tries to stab him. That was such a great scene. That is definitely his standout scene in this movie. I know Brad Loree does a similar thing in Halloween Resurrection, but I think he does it a lot better, and also he was the first one to do it, so I'm going to give him credit for it. Really, really great scene. That's definitely his standout scene. There are a few moments where maybe his performance is a little bit too robotic, too kind of strict, and just kind of very, how do you want to say it, just too perfect, and just beat after beat, whatever you want to call it. Especially when he's stabbing one of the girls in this movie, and he's just, again, just beat after beat each stab, and it doesn't look natural. But otherwise, everything else, his gait, the way he holds the knife, nothing there bothers me. And I think he's overall got many similarities to Nick Castle, and then the one other person on here, which I'm sure you've already guessed, James Jude Courtney. Well, I guess not extreme similarities to James Jude Courtney, but certainly Nick Castle, and adds a few things that we've never seen before that look really, really great with that sort of natural human-like movements, especially in that scene where he lowers in the bar. That was just such a great scene. And the only thing that sort of bothered me was probably the final act of this movie, where Laurie's about getting ready to just chomp his head off, and he's bringing out his arm, and he's like, oh, please, please don't do this, or whatever. Obviously pretty awkward, but that was probably more of something they just wrote in the script for him to do, so it's not really much of his fault. But Chris Durand, overall, I think his performance is really solid. I'm not sure why some people do not like his performance. Number 2 is going to be, it's a tough competition between these two, I will say, and some people have one above the other, but for me, at number 2 is James Jude Courtney. And I waited to do this ranking because I was like, I'll give him one more chance. I'll give him one more chance to prove me wrong, because I know there were many people who put James Jude Courtney above Nick Castle, but for me, Nick Castle is just the better Michael Myers. James Jude Courtney obviously does a really, really great job in the 3 films. And I think the only thing that probably held him back from being put above Nick Castle was just the fact that in Halloween Ends, he wasn't in it enough. We didn't get enough of Michael Myers, and even when we do get Michael Myers, he's kind of sort of low energy, kind of just this like old crippled dude. So he can't really do much. So really, we don't get to see Michael in his normal state until the end of the movie, where he's all warmed up and he's ready to fight Laurie. So we just don't get enough of Michael for me to put James Jude Courtney above Nick Castle. I think he could have easily taken that spot away from him if he had more screen time, but unfortunately he didn't. So his 2 standout performances are obviously in Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. I love his performance in the firefighter scene. I've said to you guys already that I love that scene. I know some people don't like that scene for some reason. I absolutely love his performance in that scene. Just the way that he picks up the fire axe and just tosses it over in his hand, and he's like, yeah, I'm ready. Oh my god, so great. Got me so pumped in the trailers. And then also his gait, nothing really too different for his knife, the way he holds the knife, but his gait especially. Really, really great. In the trailers, when I saw the trailer for Halloween 2018 for the first time, and he's walking in Haddonfield, he's bumping into the kids, very similar to the original Halloween, and then he turns around, goes into the garage, picks up the knife. So great. Love that. Got me so excited. A little bit robotic, I will say, where he looks down at the knife and he's like, I'll take that. A little bit too robotic, not so natural. But he does definitely have a lot of standout scenes because obviously he was in multiple movies. I think the main one is in, I believe it was Halloween Kills, where he is stabbing the older lady, and he keeps taking knives from the knife holder and trying out the different knives and kind of testing them out. Just great standout scene there. His head tilts, I just don't think are as effective as Nick Castle's, just because the more the head tilt is used, I think the less impressive it gets. I think they overuse it a little bit in this new trilogy. But overall, James Jude Courtney certainly a big contender, and I can certainly see why you would put him above Nick Castle. But for me, Nick Castle is still at number one. Number one is, of course, Nick Castle, the guy who played Myers in the original Halloween. And there's a reason why they still use Nick Castle's breathing, even in these modern day trilogies, and it's just because Nick Castle is Myers. He is the embodiment of Myers. You know, you can put anybody behind the mask, you can put anybody, you know, in a jumpsuit, cover their face, whatever. But internally, it's still going to be Nick Castle who is that true Michael Myers. And that's why, in case you didn't know, they did use Nick Castle's breathing in the three modern day sequels for Halloween. Otherwise, James Jude Courtney played Myers in most of the scenes, except for one scene. I believe it was a scene where in Halloween 2018 where he's looking out the window at Laurie and she shoots the window and then he disappears. I believe that scene was actually Nick Castle there. But otherwise, his main performance was in, of course, the original Halloween. And, I mean, what do I have to say? His performance is just so great. There's just so many subtle things to his performance that was the main reason why Halloween hooked onto me so early in my childhood, and what made me such a big fan of this franchise really had a lot to do with Nick Castle's performance. Just the subtle things he does in this movie. A few of his standout scenes for me, especially. Obviously, the scene where he's in the bush, and then he just nonchalantly walks away. He just walks into the bush, and then they check it, and he's already gone. Just so natural looking, just nonchalant. Also, when he's standing, in the bed sheets outside, and Laurie's looking out the window, and he's just standing there. And definitely the biggest standout scene for me, which I don't know why a whole lot of people don't talk about this scene. But it's that scene where Lonnie is running outside after interrogating, I should say, Tommy. Lonnie starts running out to school, and then he stumbles into Michael, and he puts his hand out there just to stop him. He looks up at him for a second, and then he leaves. And then he turns away, touches the fence, starts walking. Look at him. We got this kind of POV shot of Michael, and then also in the few scenes where we get a POV of him driving. It's just so great. It's just something about it makes it so great, and is what elevates the movie, and also what hooked me onto this movie when I was a kid. I was like, this guy is just really, really cool. I don't know what it is. It's just something subtle about it that hooked me on so much. So Nick Castle, I think, has the absolute best performance out of the 10. I could certainly understand how, why you would put James Jude Courtney above Nick Castle, but for me, Nick Castle is the shape. He is the embodiment of the shape, and yeah, that will conclude this ranking. So be sure to share your list in the comments section down below, and stay tuned for even more rankings to come this October. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else for me to say. Like and subscribe, guys, and I will see you next time.